And hello, everybody. Welcome to FSU Coach Live. My guest today is Robert Ehsan. He is the assistant coach of men's basketball at Stanford University. Robert, thanks so much for joining me. If you wouldn't mind, just share a little bit of your background, how you got started in coaching, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on, Tim. I'm originally from California, played college basketball at UC Davis. When I was a freshman in college, I had an idea that I might want to coach college basketball. And I remember asking one of my assistant coaches, he's actually now a head coach in Division I, but asking him, how when you're in college, do you put yourself in a position to become a coach? And, one of the things back then was he said, you got to work summer camps and you got to meet coaches. So growing up in California, I was a big, not only a Pac-12 fan, but also an ACC fan. And, I love the Maryland, Duke, North Carolina rivalries, if you will, growing up. And so I reached out to Maryland and I said, hey, I'd love to come out and work your summer camp. This is while I'm a student athlete in college. And I'd love to work the camp. I'll pay my own way. You don't have to pay me. I'll work for free. I just want to come and get that experience. And I did that all through college. Every summer I went back and worked the Maryland camp. When I graduated, coincidentally, they had an assistant position open. And so I applied for the job. They knew me as the kid from California that came out there every summer. And I was able to start under Gary Williams as a grad assistant, got my MBA while I was at Maryland. And really, I tell everybody, PhD in coaching right out of college, working for a Hall of Fame coach, one of the most successful programs in college basketball, 3 years removed from a national championship. So I was Coach Williams then promoted me to full-time assistant coach at the age of 24, 25 years old. I think I was the youngest assistant coach in the ACC for a short period of time. And then Coach Williams retired in 2011. We had some success at Maryland during my years there, won the 2010 ACC regular season championship, and went to Virginia Tech for 1 year, worked for Seth Greenberg. Now, works for Seth. Coach Greenberg works for ESPN. Worked for him for 1 year. And then my current boss had Jared Haas, who's now the head coach at Stanford. He was an assistant at North Carolina. And we had met each other during my time at Maryland and Virginia Tech. He had gotten the head job back in 2012 at UAB in Birmingham, Alabama. Asked me if I wanted to come be an assistant. I had never stepped foot in the state of Alabama, Tim, until my first day on the job. And
Little culture shock.
Yeah, it was we loved Birmingham. So I go there. We do really well. We win 2 championships. Coach Haas gets the Stanford job here in 2016. And roughly at that same time, I get named the head coach at UAB at 33 years old. Just an amazing experience, almost a dream come true, if you will, at that age to be a head coach of a Division I basketball program, and one that with as much tradition and as big as UAB was. So was the head coach for 4 years. We did well, won 76 games. Our last 3 years, we essentially won 20 games, and COVID shut us down when it shut everything down in 2020. And the day after our conference tournament, Friday the 13th, I was fired of 2020 as the head coach at UAB after 4 years. I took a year off last year. Did a lot of amazing things. Got a chance to work for the Pac-12 network, doing some TV color analyst studio work. I started a GA Leadership Academy that I still do for GAs around the country who want to be coaches. I was a GA at one point, and really got a chance to kind of reflect, grow, learn, spend a lot of time with my kids. I have 3 little kids, 8, 5, and 2 years old. And then this past April, Coach Haas had an opening for an assistant coaching job and brought me here to Stanford. So just an amazing place, Stanford. Been here obviously since April. We're just getting started here in my first season. And so that's kind of my coaching story. I feel like I've been blessed to have, at still the age of 39, a ton of different experiences all around the country, many different levels, and hopefully it'll last a lot longer.
You mentioned some things that I want to pick up on, and the first one was you willing to pay your own way to Maryland to run summer camps. And I think there's a lesson there for people that sometimes you have to invest not only your time and effort, but also money in order to get to where you want to.
I think it is arguably one of the biggest lessons for young people that often is not emphasized or talked about or for people is volunteering. I remember we brought in a speaker once, a successful military officer when I was a head coach at UAB, and he told our guys, you got to show up and you got to be willing to do it for free. And often those that when you volunteer and you say, hey, I'll do whatever it takes, you don't have to pay me, I'm there to learn, grow, and help. You'll be surprised at how many doors it opens, how many opportunities it opens. And I think they first kind of thought I was crazy. Well, this guy wants to come from California and we're not going to pay him. Obviously, of course, they did end up paying me, but I thought it was a huge, I made a huge impression on the Maryland staff at that time that this kid is driven. He wants to be in coaching. And I told them, look, I grew up a ACC fan. It'd be my dream to coach one day at a school like Maryland. And again, I'll do whatever it takes to, to be here. And I think it's an important lesson that for young people, can be very critical and important.
You moved to Alabama. You said you'd never been there before. You were an assistant coach, and then you took over the UAB program. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like going from an assistant coach to the guy in charge who makes all the decisions and everything is on you now?
Yes, and I would say that's probably an 8-part interview series we could do. It's funny because from when I got the job to the very first game, November 11th, ironically, my late grandfather's birthday, who I was named after, the day before my mom's birthday, they're all there in Birmingham. And I used to tell people, they'd ask me all the time, how's the transition going? And I'd say it's easy. Again, we hadn't played any games. We had a lot of guys coming back. That was why I got the job. We had our recruits stay. So it was in a really good place to program. And then I'll tell this quick story. 10 minutes into our first game, as a head coach, Nick Norton is our starting point guard, is the Conference USA Scholar Athlete of the Year the year before. So almost like our Tom Brady, if you will, Tim, our quarterback of our team, won 2 championships with him at the point guard. He tears his ACL at half court and he's out for the season. And driving home that night, Fran Fraschilla, who has now become a friend of mine, he tweeted that young Rob Ehsan is going to get a crash course in handling adversity. And was he right, Tim? Because that year was an up and down roller coaster. And there's so many different things I learned. One of the first things I learned is emotional discipline. I didn't have any emotional discipline as a young head coach. I was all over the board. I was fired up. I was yelling. I was screaming. I was trying to find myself. Mm-hmm. I think it took me about 1.5 to 2 years to really find who I was as a head coach, being comfortable in my own skin. Was I trying to be Gary Williams for a little bit? I was trying to be Coach Haas for a little bit. So I think when making those decisions, when every decision falls on your lap, I think the pressure was difficult to deal with. I think emotional discipline is a big one. And just handling adversity, and making decisions in the heat of the moment and being ready for that. I was a workaholic. I don't think I did a good job of having balance in my life and being able to keep myself physically and mentally healthy. I tell all coaches now that one of the most important traits, maybe this is any organization, Tim, but of coaches, is your ability to be your best at critical times of the year and in the most pressure-filled times. And I think finding out how you are your best, where you're clear-minded, where you can make decisions with clarity and conviction, those are things that I learned on the fly at 33. I'll never forget my first year where we went to play Texas right before Christmas. Ironically, we're playing Texas here in a few days here at Stanford, but we got beat by 40. And I remember really having so much self-doubt. What am I doing? I have no idea what I'm doing. I remember just being lost after that game. It was right before Christmas and really struggling with how to handle that adversity, and everyone's looking at you. And as a young coach with a lot of pressure on myself, I think that was difficult. But those are a few things I'm happy to touch on more that kind of come to mind.
Well, let's touch on the balance, because you have a family. and you just told us you're a workaholic. How do you handle that desire to always be working? Because I promise you, I know what that feels like. With I need to spend time with my family, and you've got the opinions of many people provided to you, whether you want them or not, regarding what you should or shouldn't be doing. So how did you handle that pressure and learn to maybe balance your life so that it's not all work?
So, yep, I will say I was a workaholic.
Okay.
And I think the biggest thing I've learned, and it took me getting fired and going through that adversity to really figure this out, was I was not intentional with my time. And, there's a great book called The One Thing, very famous book. It talks about this concept of blocking your time. And as a head coach, a high Division I level, with one coach told me, he's so right. Your to-do list as a head coach never, ever, ever ends. Right. So my inability to block my time, I think as a head coach really affected me in some of those ways. And I think it's now I've gained perspective in that my role is totally different, obviously, as an assistant coach. But even now, being able to be intentional with my time, being more disciplined with my daily schedule, as simple as it sounds, is incredibly important for coaches. Because again, in our world of coaching, player development, scouting, recruiting, it never stops, and it can never stop if you don't let it. And I think so being intentional with my time and blocking, and time blocking, is a concept that if ever I'm a head coach again, I would implement and be very, very strict with. And I think finding out, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but what gives you as a leader, as a coach, what can you do personally to decompress, to get away at times, again, so that you can be clear-minded and convicted and make important decisions. And then the ability, you kind of said it, to control the controllables, as easy as it sounds. Surrender to the outcome was very difficult for me because I was a young coach. I had a ton of expectations on our program. If we weren't winning the conference or we weren't top 3, I felt we were like a failure. I think that was the sentiment around the program. So when we came up short in the first year, it was on my shoulders. And I think dealing with that was difficult. And I don't know how you prepare for something like that until you really go through it. And I think, I've studied a lot of coaches. I think, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's book, Win Forever, is one of my favorite for all coaches. And just talks about the growth he had in the adversity of being fired and being able to come up with his own philosophy and stick to it. As I mentioned, I was a busy bee. I was all over the place. I had all these different ideas, trying to enter different things every year as a head coach. And again, I just, those are great lessons that I try to apply to my job now as an assistant. But I think, yeah, that's pretty much it with that.
When we talk about words in the media or conversations between people, we hear things such as released from his contract, let go, etc. But you use the term fired, which is it's a very hard word and has very clear definitions. Can you talk a little bit about how that happened, how you kind of went through that process? Because as you alluded to, nobody likes to be in a position where they're told essentially you failed.
Yeah.
And what was that like for you? How did you process that in order to regroup and learn from it?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I said this earlier. It was Friday, March 13th, 2020, right before literally the world is shut down. And I think, as much as you try to grow and learn, you never forget about it. I think maybe that's one of the reasons I say it, because I say it the way I do, is just a reminder that especially in this profession, sometimes, and this is in life, your dream job can get taken away from you in a matter of minutes, sometimes outside of your control. And this sounds cliche, but I used to tell all our players all the time, it's not what happens to us, it's how we handle the adversity we go through. So I think a year and a half later, even a year later, I am a better husband, better father, better leader, better coach because of that. Because of not just what happened to him, but because of the journey that I was able to go on, I think in the last year to step away from the game. And I jokingly told a high profile college coach a couple months ago, if everybody could leave their job for 1 year and then go and get paid and go back to it, the world would have so much, the coaches in this world would be so much better. I mean, obviously that's not reality, but that's really what happened to me. And it took a while, it took a few months. I remember after I was let go, I was trying to get another job as fast as I can. I was still in the rat race of, okay, what's next? What's next? I was never able to really slow down and think about, what did I do well? Like, who am I as a coach? Who do I want to be? And when you go through being fired and it's public and many people's lives are affected by it, not just my family, but many of my staffs and many of our players and many people that, at UAB, we used to call ourselves a family, right? So many of these people that you consider family, their lives are being affected by it. It's a moving experience. And I think I talked to a lot of people, obviously, and I think in my mind, at some point, a month or two after that, I realized that I was not going to let this situation define me. That all the dreams I ever had when I was younger, I could still accomplish if I want to. But it just gave me perspective about, I think what my purpose is. Why do I coach? I've been tried to be very honest with many coaches and GAs that I mentor about the mistakes that I made and hopefully helping other people. And at the core of me, that is why I originally got into coaching, was to help others and to be a part of young people's success and hopefully inspire young people as their coach, as my high school coach did for me, at a very young age. So I think that all that together, has really made for what I think has been an awesome thing for me. That's really changed my life, my day-to-day life, really, in ways that, I don't know I would have ever gotten to the place I am now if I didn't go through that.
You talked about developing this GA Leadership Academy during this time off. Can you share a little bit about what that is, and maybe for those who are GAs, how they can be involved in that?
Yeah. I was a part of, Ryan Hawk runs the Learning Leader podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Tim, but it's a leadership podcast. And I become close with him in my year out of coaching. And I was a part of one of his leadership circles, these monthly Zooms where we talk about leadership, we connect with other people. And I said, there's nothing like this for graduate assistants out there who are trying to start their career. They're trying to learn the business. They're trying to learn how to make connections with people. And here I was out of coaching, had, 15 years of experience, a lot of relationships with different coaches. And I thought it would be, just an awesome thing for me to host and teach a GA Leadership Academy. So I called Doc Sander, who runs the Top Connect organization, which is a professional development networking organization for college basketball coaches. And I said, hey, I would love for you guys to sponsor this idea. We put it out publicly last December, around this time, actually. And we said, it's totally free, 22 spots, and we had 120 GAs apply.
Wow.
I think it was at that time that I realized, and we just put it out on social media, but I realized that there's a huge need for, personal development, collaboration for young coaches. They're looking for it. Outside, I was a GA. I know how busy they are. And one of my goals was to create a group of 20 GAs that were all at a similar point in their life, that could help each other for the next 10, 15 years.
Mhm.
Coaching is a relationship business. It's who you know. So it was an incredible success. We hosted this academy, if you will, from January to April. A lot of them got jobs. We had guest speakers. We did leadership exercises. It was a bi-weekly Zoom on a Sunday night. And then because it went so well, I decided to do another one. And we started that one in July and just June or July and just finished that in October with another 20 GAs. Something I hope to keep going. My boss I'm incredibly grateful that he's allowed me to do it. But it's kind of my own way, Tim, of giving back, of being a part of the future generation of coaches, men's and women's. We've only done basketball. I think there's a market for other sports. But I post stuff about it on my Twitter at Rob Ehsan, and we'll do another one at some point, not during this basketball season, probably in April or May. We'll start up another cohort, the third one. But yeah, and it's been an amazing experience. It's being able to, again, be inspirational and be a mentor, if you will, to these young people is a really, really cool thing that I've thoroughly enjoyed.
That's great. When we talk about coaching with somebody who maybe hasn't been a coach yet, I had this conversation with an 18-year-old this morning. He told me he wanted to be a coach. That's great. Okay, how can I help you? Maybe they don't understand the realities of coaching yet. And they think that they're going to be front and center, the star of the show, making the big bucks, and life is good. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe one or two of the most difficult aspects of your job?
Yep. And maybe, Tim, I'll talk about when young people ask me how to get into coaching, kind of my answer too. Would that be, I think that's
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. I think the most difficult challenge for young people to enter, especially the Division I level, where, again, what you said, where it's the people see you on TV and, the glitz and the glamour and all that on social media, is you have to be willing in 99% of most cases to start at the bottom. As a GA, you're not making really any money at all. Every school handles grad assistants differently. Lower support staff make incredibly low money. And the hours are endless. There's it's not you come in at 9, you leave at 5. I mean, and now with recruiting, with all the things that are going on in college athletics, the job never stops. So I think the biggest challenge is young people wanting to pay the price, if you will, to be a coach, because it's a long journey. And I was kind of lucky, obviously, of my situation of becoming an assistant coach quickly, but it's probably from somebody entering as a grad assistant or a entry level support staff. The average time probably to becoming an assistant coach at any level is a few years, let alone the highest levels of college basketball, like a Stanford. It's a lot longer. You have to pay your dues. So I think the biggest challenge is starting at the bottom. And you know this, I think, as well as anybody, that young people don't really want to do that nowadays. It's kind of like we talked about earlier, the volunteering thing. They want, everybody, we live in a world where, instant gratification, everyone wants to get paid the big bucks. And I did too at a young age, but I was willing to put in the hours, pay the price, to build my reputation over amount of years that helped me get opportunities. So I think that's the biggest challenge. And then I think the next part is just this is a difficult profession. It's hard to create stability at the highest levels of college coaching, stability in your life. And I think one of the biggest keys when you get the age, when you're married or you have a partner, is having someone who understands that. I mean, I feel incredibly lucky. And since the age of 23, I've lived in DC, Blacksburg, Virginia, Birmingham, Alabama, now Palo Alto, California, which is 4 places in 15 years is probably like great compared to most people. The average 15-year moving in different cities. And now if you want to have a family, so the lifestyle part of it, who's your partner in life? Who do you marry? That part is incredibly important. And again, when you're 22 or you're 18, you're not thinking about those kind of things. One of the things we had a Zoom with our GAs recently, a reunion Zoom, and I just had finished the book Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, about the Nike story. And at the end of the book, he says, if I had to tell all people in their mid-20s a piece of advice, it would be don't seek out a profession or a job, seek out a calling and try to figure out what that is, because it will make the difficult times easier. It will make the adversity well worth it. And it will make the highs, feelings that you've never felt before in your life. And I think, everybody, the coaching job from the outside is a very, high profile, sexy job, but on the inside, it's very, it's difficult. It's high pressured. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of sacrifice from family. And so I think, those are some of the things that I think about, in the profession.
Last question then. When you're thinking about being an assistant coach, you talked about maybe one day, hopefully, being a head coach. What do you do to help yourself achieve that goal that you have now in the environment that you're in? Are there any specific things that you think benefit you beyond, as you've alluded to, networking as a great example? Are there other things that assistant coaches in particular could be doing to help them move up to becoming a head coach?
Great question. So I'm going to go back to my former self as an assistant coach. And I was on a relentless path to be a head coach. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest things I did throughout my journey that helped that. When I was at Virginia Tech for one season, I was 29 years old. It was in the ACC. And Coach Hass had got the UAB job, which is not the ACC. UAB was a lesser conference. They had struggled. Mm-hmm. Coach asked me if I wanted to come to be an assistant. And a lot of people told me, Rob, do not leave Virginia Tech. You're in the ACC. You're in your 20s. Like, that is a bad move. It was the pay was less going to UAB.
Really?
Yeah. But I took a step down in the profession, if you will, to get the experience that I felt like I needed to be able to have an opportunity to become a head coach.
Can I ask what you thought was going to be more experiential moving than staying?
What I thought is, in my experiences, the first thing was I had never been a part of a staff or a coaching staff where a coach was taking over a new program. So I didn't know what that looked like, number one. I also had the dream in the back of my mind that if I could go to UAB and help Coach Hass build it. And again, I was very confident too at that age. Hey, we're going to go to UAB and we're going to kill it. I'm going to have a chance to be the head coach. Mm-hmm. Again, it was, looking back, I think it was probably somewhat, it was pretty optimistic of me to think that, but it played out like that. And so taking a step down for assistant, it's so hard to get a head coaching job, especially at the Division I level. There's only 357 jobs. And being in the right situation and having the right experiences. I do think that the networking part is incredibly important. Being able to make authentic connections with people that are involved in athletic directors and search firms is very, very challenging as well at a young age. And when you're an assistant and you're trying to be a head coach. And the best thing that I think I did was I tried as much as I felt comfortable with to reach out, to write letters, to go to some of the conferences and shake hands. But at the end of the day, my work, I think, spoke for itself. And there's not one, the reputation I felt like I built as an assistant coach at Maryland, at Virginia Tech, and then at UAB, I think was the reason at the end of the day I got the head coaching job. And I will remember a quick story, Tim, that my former boss who hired me to be the head coach at UAB, they called everybody, as you can imagine. During it was an 8-day period between Coach Hass getting to Stanford and me being hired. And they called one of the former athletic directors of one of the schools I was at. And I did not have a great relationship with that athletic director, but they spoke very highly of me I think because of the energy I showed around the athletic department, the way in which I carried myself, with the players, around the building, on campus. And it's all those things that, it's the cliche that you never know who's paying attention. And I think the best thing you can do is build your own reputation the right way. While trying to build authentic connections with people. And that's something we talk to our GAs about. And I use the GA platform to bring in speakers and teach them how to follow up. Not to get off on a tangent, but the lack of follow-up from, again, coaches, all ages, when they meet someone, when they make a connection with somebody, the lack of consistent follow-up is absolutely incredible. And we had a great speaker. I mentioned him earlier, Ryan Hawk. He spoke to our GAs. He runs the Learning Leader podcast. And he said, if you just follow up consistently for 1 year with a connection you make, maybe it's a once a month text message or a handwritten letter or email, you will be differentiating yourself above 90% of the competition. And isn't that so true? And again, it goes back to everyone's busy, right? Everyone has 100 things to do, but being able to, going back to what I said earlier, allocate your time and be disciplined with your time and be efficient with your time.
Well, you've segued nicely into how to get in touch with you. What is the best way if somebody has a question or wants to follow up or learn more about your Leadership Academy?
Yeah, my email is RH and then my last name EHSAN@gmail.com. And yeah, I'm happy to help anybody and give advice and share more about our GA program. As I said, you can tell I'm very passionate about it and excited about the future of it as well.
And I absolutely agree with you in terms of making contact, keeping contact, and making it more than just a connection that you claim to have. And so I hope people watching now or watching in future will take the time and actually reach out to Rob, and who knows where it may lead. Well, Rob, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your contributions, of course, and just remind everybody we're shutting down for the holiday break, but we'll be back in the new year with more guests. And don't forget to like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss any.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
Thank you.